I'm excited. Tonight we have on Ashley Covelli. She is the creator of Big Flavors, Big Flavors from a Little Kitchen, food blog from way back in the day. Ashley, thank you for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having me, man. It's been a while.
It really has. I do have to tell you, first things first, you are talking to a Papandrea.
Yes,
Everything you say can and probably will be used against
yes.
you.
Forever and ever in the future.
That's right,
Yes,
in
perpetually.
perpetuity.
Yes, yes, yes.
So the reason why I wanted to talk to you tonight is because we've been friends for quite a while, family friends through a lot of different connections there. And you've been in the food space for, I'm going to say, well, let's round it up to decades, since 2006.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm a
t-
dinosaur,
Talk to us
basically.
about what you're doing with Big Flavors from a Tiny Kitchen, and what I want to do is kind of start with what's going on now,
Hmm.
um, and then we'll walk it back, and then kind of
Right.
expand out to all the things that it's kind of created, because now you're doing a podcast, and there's a lot of other things you're working on too. So, tell us about what how it's going and how it started.
Sure. Well, as you can imagine, I started in 2006, so things have changed a lot. I let's see. Currently, I don't love the term food blogger. I think it implies kind of like a hobby type of thing, which is completely fine. It's just not what I'm doing with it. It is my career. So I have a food and recipe website. Content's been going on their recipes since 2006, so I've got a lot of stuff to work with. I also have a lot of stuff that's very old and outdated and needs to be a little, spruced up. Um, so what I do is I develop recipes. My background, like professional background, is in commercial art, illustration, like fine art type of stuff. So I was a senior graphic designer for a while. So I have like an actual photography background. So that's kind of how what I leaned into initially with food writing is the photography part of it and like making things look pretty. I recently kind of scaled back. I was doing some online like virtual cooking classes. I think the Zoom fatigue is real and it's not quite as popular as it was back in, let's say, the 2020 times. But that was a great way to connect with people. I love interacting with people, helping them feel comfortable with trying new things, um, cooking meals for their loved ones. They don't have to be complicated. Um, so I still occasionally will do virtual cooking classes, but I really like kind of I'm trying to focus a little more on updating posts on my website. I have things that I shot like 3 or 4 years ago that I have not even posted yet. Just earlier today, I republished a recipe that was originally from like 2010, but I revamped it. It's a passion fruit margarita, and I came up with a like a mocktail version of it. So just trying to provide options for people. You know, Posts on food websites used to be, here's my life story and here's a photo I took with a flip phone and then this is what I thought of this recipe. But now it's kind of more writing, tips and tricks and ways for you to be successful making something at home, or like say you don't like a certain ingredient, I'll give you ideas for how you can substitute it out if you want to make something meatless. So just trying to be more realistic for people in the kitchen and helping them connect through food in whatever time frame they have
Yeah.
available.
So I
Yeah.
noticed that when I was actually looking through your website, it's not laid out like the typical blog. So um, a lot of people who follow probably know that I was doing blogging in 2010. I started and kind of went through 2017 right after my son was born, and then shifted over to the video thing. But yeah, I remember I was doing recipes, and the
Mhm.
format was, there's a chunk where you talk about what you're doing, and
Yep.
then the recipe. That there was a stigma that came with that, a lot of criticism over like the
Mm,
2015 to 2020-ish time. So you've kind of shifted, and there's a lot of utility in the recipes that you
mhm.
have there. Um, Definitely huge focus on photography. And I
Yeah.
actually can pull it up on the screen just to kind of illustrate, but there are links to this in the notes below. But yeah, I mean, like for example, I noticed, I was listening to your podcast, which we'll get to in a second, and you were talking about egg recipes, and I noticed right at the top of your
Mhm.
website, you know, somebody who's been doing this for decades, nice copywriting. It's right there. You click on it, and you could see, all your deviled egg recipe right there. Um, so I think that's pretty cool, and it's definitely one of those things. You obviously have been paying attention to the demand, right?
Mm. Yeah, it's a fine balance of, posting things that I wanna post because 'cause I'm excited about sharing them, things that I think will actually be useful for people, and then, a lot of people kinda get, stuck into this SEO, search engine optimization, for those who don't have to live in this world, knowing what people are actually searching for. So, to me, I like to put a little bit more feel into it, so if I'm only focusing on what does the data say that people are looking for, like, it kinda takes the joy out of it for me. So I try to find a balance between things that people are actually looking for and things that I'm excited to teach them to make, because yeah, it can feel a little soul sucking if you're not careful, and you get too far into the analytics. But also, if you're posting a recipe for something that nobody's looking for, unless you have a huge, huge following, there's just not going to be any page views.
Yeah, and the funny thing is everything that you say there applies completely to YouTube as well.
Oh yeah,
Because the recommendation system, it's brutal. If people
oh
don't
yeah.
respond to what you post, it's gonna not go anywhere, and it's like, I put so much time into editing this video, and doing all this stuff, and then nobody watches it, and like you say, it's soul crushing. Um,
Mhm.
and one thing I can relate with you on in terms of being so far behind, I actually have videos from 2022 that I'm still working on getting into my editing queue.
Yeah,
And actually, part of the reason why I've been doing these podcast interviews weekly is because I'm so burnt out on editing that
yeah,
I just wanted to do something where it was a little bit more chill and talk to people and do that kind of thing. So yeah, I feel that definitely. Um, you kind of pulled me into a direction I was going to get to later in the conversation, but where do you see, because SEO is kind of they're saying SEO is dead, and obviously it's not,
right.
but it's definitely evolving. What
Mhm.
do you see happening in terms of how let's call it AI, whatever
Right.
that's the buzzword. How is that kind of um, playing into the discovery of your type of stuff? And we'll get to social media after, but like,
Yeah.
because I'm sure you're getting it from different directions there. So let's talk about strictly first the AI, and how do you think you can incorporate that into what you're doing?
Um, I know a lot of people in the same food space use AI in certain ways to make it helpful. Some people definitely use it to do everything for them, and you can kind of tell. I recently saw a fairly big food site with these like AI generated photos of, I mean, like pizza can't levitate like that, spoons with like weird bends and like, like other dimension type of thing. So, I feel like when it's really obvious that it's not written by a human, it becomes less trustworthy. So, you know, even if somebody wrote if I saw a post that seemed a little suspicious, I wouldn't be confident that the recipe would actually work. So hopefully, building trust with an audience over whatever amount of time you've been doing it, can help you actually retain people. AI definitely, I mean, you can use it for good things, you can help it you can use it to help you come up with prompts for a newsletter, or, if I'm working on a certain recipe and I'm looking for information to add to, like, build out the article a little bit, but you always have to fact check, that's the thing, it pulls from various sources, and you don't wanna be putting, false information out there, so I probably use it a lot less than I could and a lot less than a lot of people do, but I'm spending time on updating things, and I'm not, like, churning out a new post every single day on my website. But a lot of people are, like, worried about it and if it's gonna, like, take their job, and yeah.
It's definitely one of those things that if you're a smart creator, you can see where the value is and you can
Mhm.
incorporate it. Like for example, I've used it to generate some like YouTube titles, and it's actually helped
Mhm.
me in a couple cases
Yeah.
get something that connects with the audience really well. But in other cases, you can like I can see when I'll type in a prompt, and then I'll have to ask it to actually refine that, because it ends up giving you something very generic, and it loses kind of that, like you say, authenticity. Um,
Mhm.
and for me, I could see it from a mile away. Um,
Right.
this is the worst AI is going to be into the future. Obviously, it's going to get better and better, but
Yeah.
still, to me, I'd rather connect with creators that you know I can relate with, A, and B, obviously aren't, robots.
Yeah, I think, like, I mean, leaning into tools like this is something that people can do, like, for good or for evil and have been doing for a long time. I mean, people buy followers, like, there's a whole one year I do, like, a blogiversary post every year on, like, August 1st, and one of the years I was feeling, like, a little not salty, but I was just a little, like, I'm gonna throw out some of the things that people might not know that go on with food bloggers and just to let people know. It's like you can
Yep.
feel however you want to about it, but just so you know, if somebody has 1,000,000 followers, they aren't necessarily all real. There's like, all sorts of bots and scams and things you can pay for, and good for them if that's what they wanna do to get ahead, but, it's, everybody has their own kind of moral compass and where they think the line should be drawn with it.
Yeah.
But, there's definitely I mean, there's a lot of great things, like, if you're trying to figure out, like, springtime ingredients, you could say, "Give me a list of 20, spring, uh, pieces of produce that are good in spring," or whatever, and
Yep.
it just sometimes can help you get started, and, I know a few people who use it to help them, like, write descriptions for Pinterest and stuff like that, so you'll have, like, your content, and then you can kinda ask it, "Hey, can you help me generate a pin description for this?"
Yeah.
Um,
That
so
that
it
that's
can
where I see it the most powerful in terms of, like, teaching it how to speak in your language.
Mhm.
There's scary versions out there. There's, like, the audio versions where, like, you can train it to actually talk like you.
My son has done that. He's 12. He's done
W
that. He's made
Yeah,
one of his voice. It's
you know?
terrifying.
What I think though, it's like everything. When there's a buzzword, it becomes
Mhm.
everything everybody talks about. Like you say, AI, it's been around for a long time. They're
Yeah.
just calling it something now, and people are
Mhm.
starting to, you know, flock to that, worry state,
Right.
and the whole thing. But yeah, I mean, you gotta obviously be careful, and I think the platforms like YouTube just rolled out, that if you have any AI generated content that could be considered misleading, either in a good or bad way, you have to disclose it in the upload,
Mm.
procedure, which I think is good. Um,
Yeah.
because I don't want
I
to get
think
videos of Barack Obama making statements, or the current president. That's
right.
kind of scary, right? But
Yeah. Well, and there's also, like I mean, so, like, with photography, there's I feel like a good and a bad kind of with it, like, one of my friends had taken a photo of her ingredients laid out for her whatever recipe, and she forgot to put an egg in there, so she had AI add an egg to her photo instead of having to redo the photo shoot, and I'm like, "That's a smart use of it, in my opinion."
yep.
But then also, AI could be training on photos that I took, and somebody goes and they want a picture of deviled eggs, and it could be using part of my photo in that, and that's, obviously frustrating as somebody who spends a lot of time on that. But
Yep.
I think with everything, you just if you spend all your energy trying to fight it, then you're not actually coming up with new things, and you just kind of stuck in this doom and gloom cycle. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So let's circle back to kind of the beginning of the conversation. What you mentioned that when you make your content, you kind of have a balance of, things you make for the audience, things you make for the
Mhm.
algorithms, and things you make for, like, your own type of fulfillment. What
Mhm.
give me an example of each. Like what's something that you've posted that you've done
Mm.
for, like, just because you said, I don't care if anybody watches this or reviews this,
Yeah.
I'm gonna post that.
Let me scroll a little bit here. Go to my like latest posts. I did this layout on my homepage. I changed it as of last fall. I think I went with a new theme to kind of organize things better so I could build out a recipe index. So like an example, let's see. I have this rhubarb custard pie. It's like one of my favorite things ever. My aunts made it when I was a kid. It's just been a family favorite. It's gone through many revamps over the days. And it's like, yes, some people like it. A lot more people search for a strawberry rhubarb pie. That's not what I want to make. That's not the point of that particular recipe. And it's something I love. And many people who've tried it love it. And even if it didn't get any traffic, I would leave it on my website.
Okay.
I
What
did just delete like almost 300 posts that were very old, that weren't anything that I wanted to still be up there, and they weren't really getting traffic, so just kinda trying to tighten everything up.
Yep,
Um,
pruning.
yeah, definitely pruning, trying to
What
think
what
what else.
what's something like, if you post about it, it's gonna get a lot of views?
Oh, anything with cheese boards, and I don't have a ton of cheese boards on my website. I do on my about page, I have, like, the biggest, most epic one I ever made,
Okay.
but, like, on Instagram, anytime I do a board, people love that, and people, like, on as far as, like, on social media, on the feed, I mean, I love food photos, but I always will get more interaction if I post a photo of me just because I think people like a human connection.
Yeah.
I tend to keep that more in my stories than on the feed, but
Do you,
yeah.
so we're, I guess you're talking kind of strict Instagram for the most part.
Yeah,
Um,
that's my it's my favorite, but yeah.
so have you noticed like lately? Well, I'm kind of mad at Instagram because of what they've done as far as reels for me. They kind of tricked me into posting reels there a lot, and I was getting steady revenue. Not that it was anything to write home about, but in November it literally died to nothing, and now my reels don't get any reach.
Mm,
And it's like I've been posting the same format video
yeah.
for over 2 years now. So you can't tell me the audience shifted immediately. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
have you noticed that like because Instagram kind of did this thing where it pivoted to okay, we want video content. And then people were like, okay, now I got to start making reels. I can't post my photos anymore. But now it seems like more and more in the feed and in the stories, photos are kind of coming back. Have you noticed that?
I It seems like maybe a little so I kind of fell off with being regular with posting, uh, feed photos because, yeah, they were reaching, like, barely anybody, and it was getting frustrating, but I have noticed it seems like it picked up a little bit more recently, or people just really love these brownies I posted, which is fine, I'm fine with either. Um, but yeah, I feel like over the years, there's been algorithm changes with every platform, and Google algorithm changes are a huge thing right now, and they're, like, tanking a lot of people's website traffic and,
You
um
know, just to kind of complain a little bit, if I can
yeah.
be a Papandrea for a second. Um, the I've been noticing that my Google searching, like if whenever I look for something, now it gives me like an AI,
Mm,
portion above everything, and then even
yeah,
after that, I can't find what I'm looking for. It's not
yeah,
as good as it was like a year ago.
yeah. It's like it's not It's they're trying to, like, throw new things out there and kinda see what sticks, and I honestly don't think that Google even knows what Google is doing half the time. I think they just kinda like, they'll start new like, remember, what was it, Google Meet, or, like, they have all these things that they'll throw out, and they
Yep.
seem really great, and then they just kind of, like, vanish without any explanation, so I feel like it's a little, eh, I don't know.
That's a good segue into the next topic that I had. So one of the things that's going away that Google has is an app called Google Podcasts, which actually
Oh.
I think is the best podcast platform that I've been using.
Oh,
Now they've
interesting.
wanted you to migrate everything into YouTube Music, and YouTube Music doesn't work as well with things. So I have our house is all Google, so I have like Google Chromecast
Mm.
on our TVs and stuff. So sometimes I'll want to cast to the television because I have surround sound and want to listen to my podcasts and in 5.1 Dolby surround.
Right, right, right.
Um and
For
now
podcasts, that's funny.
what that
I've never thought about that for podcasts, but I'm only a couple podcasts I listen to involve, like, music or things that I would care about, like, the full experience, I
well
guess.
it's awesome because you can do home groups and I have Google Homes like in every room.
We
So
have
if I
that
want to
with,
do
Sonos.
Yeah. So if I
Yeah.
wanna do upstairs, I have a group for upstairs, and then I can go into
Yep.
any room, I can fold towels and, I'll do all that
And you
kinda
don't
stuff.
miss a second because it's like a seamless transition, yeah.
Right. And, like, it doesn't work with YouTube Music, and the interface is
Oh.
not as nice, and it's just like and everything's jammed in, and it's like, what's the value there? But, you recently launched a podcast,
Mm.
Passing the Plate,
Yep.
right? And where you're doing, essentially, it's kind of like a family the angle that you guys are going at because your co-host is a genealogist
Mhm.
and she's bringing that side of it, and then you
Yep.
guys kind of get together and talk about a topic, um and you go pretty deep into like your own family history. Tell me a little bit about the evolution of the podcast, how it started, and kind of I know you guys are life friends,
Yeah, yeah.
so go ahead.
Um, Sure. Also, thank you in the chat. I didn't join with my YouTube in the chat, so I can't comment, but thank you very much. Um, so Lisa Listen is my co-host. She's somebody I met in an online business group years ago. Aw. um, and we were both, working on our own things, and we had this small group, and the two of us kind of had similar working styles and everything. And even after that group kind of fizzled out because people moved on to other businesses or projects, um, we we kept meeting like once a month just for accountability. So we'd like both have, business goals or whatever we wanted to work on. Um, and we always said, man, food and family history really go well together. I wish there was a way we could collaborate, and we couldn't figure anything out for the longest time. She lives in North Carolina. I live in New York. So I've met her in person a couple times. She's come out to New York to visit. And we were trying to think, how can we collaborate? And then it just kind of came to us. It's like, what if we had a podcast where we just talk about, we both love food. So if we talk about food and how it brings people together, but then we can also kind of deep dive into how you can like preserve family memories through food, and recording recipes, how to get recipes from people, like if you're just watching them cook something. Because if your grandma says like, oh yeah, I just put just a little of this and a little of that, like you're never going to be able to make whatever the recipe is. um and then we're kind of trying to make this not just for people who are into ancestry research as like a hobby. With, I kind of joke, my husband has he's been diving into his Italian heritage, and I joke that he's got like the wall with all the red strings and the dots like connecting all the stuff. Like he doesn't really, but it gets like really deep like that. We're trying to kind of make it a little more modern and exciting for people just to connect with. It doesn't have to be your blood relatives. Like if you have a really close friend and you love a dish that that they have at their family, why not incorporate that into your family and your traditions? And then, just kind of, I don't know, food just brings people together, and we could talk about food all day. So it's been a lot of fun.
It's
Um,
cool. I
yeah.
have listened to every episode,
Oh,
including the
thank you.
latest. Um,
Oh, it came out yeah, it comes out on Thursdays. I
yeah,
mean, I've listened to it when I edited it, but I didn't listen today.
today you guys talked about hard-boiled eggs, um,
Yes. Oh yeah,
because
because Easter is
Easter
Sunday.
is right around the corner.
We
Um,
planned that.
uh, this is the SEO mind.
Yes, we actually just Monday recorded. We have everything recorded through, I wanna say April or May. I think through May, but I have to go edit them. So it's a lot of work, but
Wow.
it's been a really fun project and different. It's like a different challenge for both of us.
Yeah.
Um, and we
Yeah,
split
no,
the work up really
I
well.
I love it. I think you guys are doing a really good job. Like even the topics, like you've gone from I don't want to get back to the hard boiled egg one, but
Yeah.
there were episodes that were about coffee and kind of,
Mhm.
how coffee started and your connections with
Yeah.
coffee and things like that. There was the episode about the cornbread, and that was about interpreting the recipes and
Yeah.
all that
And
stuff.
and one of our, so Lisa, my co-host, she's from the South, and her grandma made this cornbread, and she like talks, has said such good things. I could practically taste it just listening to her talk about it. And in one of the ones coming up, I tried to recreate it based on a handwritten recipe from her grandma, and things happened. We'll say that. We discussed the results.
Did you capture it in any way other than photo?
Y uh, Photo, I mean, I wrote up a recipe, like a little, I asked some questions to get like a more clear recipe out of it. Um, well, like spoiler alert, something with one of the ingredients I believe was off and kind of ruined it.
Okay.
But it was fun. Like she has a video of her grandma making it. So I was able to like watch the video and see like, hey, I noticed she did this, and then I would, kind of incorporate that.
Yeah.
Um, Not really a
Pretty
fan of
cool.
the white part. Can you make
Yeah,
it
so I'll
flavorful?
pull up the question here. So Sarah in the chat, we're going back to the hard-boiled eggs. Not really a
Yeah.
fan of the white part. Is there anything to do to make it more flavorful? Ashley.
So if you're doing like, have you ever had like in ramen, sometimes they'll have it like kind of marinated in like a sweet soy mixture. So if you like those type of flavors, you could, after you hard cook your egg, you can marinate it and to have like some other flavor in on the white parts. Um, you Let's see, you could like if you just wanted to add seasoning to the white, you could maybe like kind of crust it with something. I know Jacques Pepin has a recipe where he makes deviled eggs and then he puts the filling in the middle, kind of levels it off, and then pan fries it that side down. So you're getting like
I've seen that.
something else going on that texture.
One of the
Or
things
if you're
that I do, so like for a while I was eating a lot of eggs and I was taking like 4 or 5 hard-boiled eggs to work. And
Mhm.
I'd eat
I
like
bet that smelled
all the
awesome.
what's that?
I bet that smelled awesome. You
Oh
just
my god,
like
I don't even
open it
like
up.
hard-boiled eggs. I like it's but I would like toss 3 of the yolks and eat all the whites and 2 yolks, and it would like 'cause
Uh,
it's like you can't have the fat and all that stuff. It's like,
yeah.
and on the weekend I would eat 2 pieces of chocolate cake, and it's like,
Balance.
look, but what I used to do actually is like essentially just make egg salad, mash it all
Mhm.
together, and just like you, Sarah, I hate the whites because
Is it a
they're
texture
so
thing?
flavorless. Um,
Uh,
but what I would do is add a little bit of mayonnaise and then, some kind of spice blend, and I love jerk seasoning, so I would do
mm,
jerk seasoning with it.
nice.
Idea, but you pick whatever seasoning you like, and it'll kinda, taste like that.
Well, I haven't tried it, but I know a lot of people have been doing, like, on salads, they'll take instead of just, like, dicing up a hard-boiled egg, they'll, like, shred it, they'll, like, grate it on top, so you're getting like, if it's a texture thing, because I think egg whites can be, like, texturally questionable for some people,
Mhm.
that kinda helps because it makes it more, like grated cheese just kind of, like, dissipates a little better, so maybe
Yeah,
something
it'll,
like
like,
that would
dissolve
help.
into the dressing.
Yeah, yeah, that too.
Yeah. So when you guys talked about things that you could do with hard-boiled eggs on that podcast, and if you have any interest at all, I would start at that episode just because of how timely it is. Um,
Mm.
so you follow my dad on Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
This time of year, one of the things that they do, they specifically color the eggs to make an egg bread. So you'll probably see it on his Instagram over the next day or two.
Mhm.
It's like little like it's like a bread, it's like a brioche with an hard-boiled egg inside, and then they put like a thing over the top. It looks like a basket with an egg in it. Um, my brother loves it. My parents obviously love it. I never liked it. Even the bread, like I can't eat
Yeah.
around that egg. It's the grossest thing for me.
Does your
But
family call it Easter bread?
um, they
I
they
feel like it's an Italian thing. I feel like my husband's family calls it Easter bread.
So I think that is what would be called Easter bread. My
Yeah.
family calls it what they call it an Italian name, or what they
Uh-huh.
say is an Italian name. But I bet you if I said that to anybody from the tip of Italy to the north of Italy, they wouldn't understand it because it's a very weird word, and every word that we've ever heard from our family, or at least my dad's side, isn't really a word in any of
Oh,
part of
yeah.
it.
Yep.
But
That tracks for a lot of Italians I know.
the funny thing about that is, so my aunts all kind of have like they all have their own recipe for this Easter bread with the eggs in
Mhm.
it. And you'll see that they're a little different. You can tell some of them are using more yeast, some of them are using more chemical leavener. And it's just funny how like, Uncle Joe, gives some of his to my dad, and they'll say everything, but it's good, but it's not as good as my wife's.
Oh, yeah. Well,
And they
like, I
all
think they're required by law to say that too.
true. My oh,
Does
my mom's a lamb. She would never do anything.
does the egg is it hard boiled first, or does it cook while it's baking in the oven? Because it's,
Yeah.
like, baked into the bread, right?
Yeah, but it's hard boiled first. It's hard boiled and
Okay.
colored
So it's, like,
before it
real
goes into the
cooked.
bread. What's that?
So it's, like, really cooked.
Yeah.
'Cause,
I
like, wouldn't it theoretically be not like, couldn't you just, like, if you wanted to color the egg, color it raw and then bake it in with the bread?
I don't think the shells will take the color if it's raw.
Really?
Yeah.
No. Really?
I'm not sure. I'm I'm a chemist. I should probably know this.
Yeah, you need to get on this. We need answers.
I mean, I don't. And then my parents also they actually buy farm fresh eggs,
Mm,
and they usually are brown or like some shade of
right.
blue even sometimes,
Mhm.
and then they try to dye them, and then the dye doesn't stick.
Yeah.
And they don't understand that you don't have to buy the pause,
Yeah.
Easter. You can actually buy real dyes that'll stick to that. um
Mhm.
it's one of those things. So um
Yeah, I can't remember if I've tried that bread or not. It doesn't it looks beautiful, but it seems dense.
Yeah,
Like, yeah.
it's more cookie. So if I were to describe it in terms of the crumb, it kind of resembles what brioche would be, but like 10 times the density. So
Mhm. And, like, the
you can
fun of
tell it's
brioche
gonna
is how fluffy it is.
it's buttery, it's crumbly, but it tastes like brioche. It's odd. It really is. And
Yeah.
and the eggs to me, they're not edible. I when I hard cook my eggs, I do start them in cold water. I bring it up to
Mhm.
a boil, and then I let them go 11 minutes, but I turn the heat off after it comes to the boil.
Mhm. And you cover it?
Yeah.
I do the same except, 10 minutes, but ever since pretty much since I got my Instant Pot, I cook them in there, and it's, like, really easy to do soft boiled or,
Yep.
technically steamed, or hard, and then, but it depends on your I feel like every Instant Pot's a little different, so you gotta kinda test it out. Sarah says, "My sister, she's asking about the yellow part. We're sisters, but she likes the white part. Isn't mashing the boiled eggs a good idea for her?" She says she doesn't something. She so she likes the white does she not like the yellow part? Because yeah, and
Yeah.
I've seen some people, like, use it in like, they mash it up just the yolk. They'll, like, mash it up and, like, make a vinaigrette with it. And I think even that Jacques Pepin recipe that I'm thinking of, they do he saves some of the deviled egg filling and makes a salad dressing for the greens that he puts the crisp deviled eggs on, and, like, that's just
That mean he's a master
I
chef.
mean, ugh,
One of the
so cool.
OGs.
Yeah, I watched him on PBS for years as a kid. I
Yep.
loved it.
So my connection with food TV, I never loved Julia Child, and that she was a little bit before my time, but there
Mhm.
was the Galloping Gourmet,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I liked him. I
Uh-huh.
really loved Yan Can Cook, like,
Yes! Oh
those were
my
the guys
god.
I came up
Because
with.
if Yan can cook, you can cook too.
Yeah, yeah,
That was his oh my gosh, I loved it.
but, like, for me, it was, like, Emeril. As soon as the Food Network hit,
Mm.
Emeril was, like, my guy. Yeah, I still love Emeril.
Yeah, I was let me think, who did I mean, I liked watching, like, in, like, the Food 911 days, like, Tyler Florence, that was always fun. Um, I loved, like, Sarah Moulton, like, some of the, like, really OG, Food
Yep.
Network people were a lot of fun.
Michael
Uh,
Rosenbaum.
I don't know if I watched him much. I loved the original Iron Chef. I feel like that was maybe on when I was in college, like, the Japanese one.
Yep.
Um, and I recently my gym has on Pluto TV, they have Pluto TV on the treadmills, and they have the old Iron Chef, so sometimes I'm, like, in there walking, and I, like, am watching Chef Sakai from, like, the
Yep.
late '90s.
I've gotten sucked into that channel. We have, like, every streaming service and all this stuff, and
Mhm.
what I normally watch is when I run out of YouTube videos, I watch the Unsolved Mysteries channel, or I'll watch the Iron Chef channel on Pluto TV.
Nice. Very nice. So Sarah's saying she doesn't like that it's creamy in her mouth. Do you have recommendations? Mm, hmm.
That's tough because I don't like
That's
the that part either.
yeah. And is it just that she wants to eat eggs? And what about I mean, like, scrambling? Because then if you're, like, mixing them together, it's not quite that I guess it's probably, like it's a little chalky, right? That's what I'm thinking maybe she's not having a good reaction to. My son is like that with certain textures too, so I totally get that.
Yeah.
We
And
actually
it's
talked about that on an episode of our podcast too, about, like, kind of, like, being a picky eater because 'cause I'm a recovering picky eater. I used to be super picky and just trying things in different ways, and maybe you'll find a way that you do like it.
Yeah. My parents still criticize me for being a picky eater, even though I've eaten things that they'd never even think about eating.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
but they're like, "Oh, you always want everything hot and this," and I'm like, "No, mom makes delicious food. We just don't have to eat it at room temperature all the time. Like, it's all right. We can figure out a way to actually serve it hot."
We have the technology.
Right.
Is it because
Um,
she's making, like, a bunch of components and just
that
it's
and
too
it's just
much
I
at
think I
once?
think they're doing so many things. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
like, and they're running around. They just want to get it done and get it on the table.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
one of those Italian things. It's like I think for my family, the food is like it's like a ritual because when we go, all we do is sit at the table. Like it's
Mhm.
so it's like you got to have this on the table and that on the table. And instead of stressing out about it, it's just like let's get it all done and then it's all there.
Yeah.
But it's like
And then you
let's
can hang out and enjoy.
let's time it out a little better.
Yeah.
I don't mind standing by a fryer and frying calamari. It's not a
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
Um, so as you're developing content into the future, you have the podcast, you have the blog. We'll call it a website because I think food. I haven't really heard that people use the term blogging much anymore.
Mhm.
Um,
I think
because
yeah.
it's I think what you're doing is definitely not what blogging originally was.
Yeah. And like I for sure I had I was on LiveJournal. I for sure it was a blog for a while where I was just like, you know, this is what I cooked for dinner. It was from this website. This is what we thought of it. Here's a terrible picture. And hey, I'm listening to Alice in Chains. Like it's like and I'm feeling and then like whatever the emoji was like, it was just so different back then. Um but yeah, it's when I feel like when you take it to a certain point where it's not just a hobby, it kind of moves out of that. And so probably I probably stopped using that term to refer to myself unless like I'm not like offended by it. I don't particularly care for it. Back when I started doing like sponsored work and was actually like getting paid to create recipes. Because
Yeah.
then I think it made it more in my mind legitimate because I was making something with it other than just posting stuff for my friends and family to see.
Yeah. I mean, I think a fair term like for this day and age is creator. I think that's
Mhm.
probably the most accurate and encompassing term for what you're doing.
Yeah, it's hard because I feel like everybody's got an opinion on everything, and there's, like people can have a negative connotation with, the same word to you might be fine for somebody else. I know some people love the term content creator, some people hate that, some people like the word influencer, some people hate that.
Yep.
Um,
'Cause that's what I
as
was gonna go into next. Because
Yeah.
so in terms of how I've seen you, so like from a friend and colleague in a sense, I've always seen you as more of the creative type, like
Mm,
where you're putting more into the visuals and
yeah.
everything, and less from the influencer side. Um,
Right.
but I'm starting to see like in your Instagram posts, I'm seeing a little bit more of that, influencer side, like where you're coming on camera and
Mhm.
stuff like that. Now, again, I don't mean it in a negative way. That's not what
Yeah,
I'm
no.
saying. But yeah, whereas me, I started I started with YouTube. I didn't know what I wanted it to be. So at first it was like vlog. All right, we're gonna go to dinner. We're gonna go to this place.
Mhm.
One of my first like real posts was we went to dinner at a really good chef's restaurant, and then we went to see Impractical Joker. So like there's
Nice.
obviously
Double
that's
header.
the subject isn't really the video. I'm the video. Um,
Right.
and I kind of went into okay, I'm going to do recipes now. Recipes are hard because as far
Preach.
as the search, well, as far as the search stuff, people just want it. They want it and they want to get out. So
Mhm.
when you react to it, like we've grown up watching on Food Network, people are like, oh my god, shut up! Just tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Um, and they're hard to produce. I mean, we were talking just before the stream here about how you were doing live cooking classes, and I've tried to do live cooking as well on YouTube, and just to set up the lighting and get the angles
Mhm.
right and stuff. It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Um, and
People don't
then
realize how much work goes into doing anything well. Like, you can throw something out there fairly easily, but if you want it to look polished and put together, it takes more work.
and I think that's the distinction between the influencer side, where it's like, I don't want to say that's run and gun because there's obviously a lot of work that goes on to be an
Mm.
influencer, but the creative side, like you can see, and when you look at your website, it's very much, um, oh, you're trying to get me to subscribe to your thing?
Oh, that's a
Oh no,
newsletter.
sidebar.
Oh.
You could see a lot of work went into this. Like this to me is creative. Um,
Mhm.
so that's why I
Well,
would classify it that way.
for me, I went to art school, so I've always identified as a creative, so, like, it's yeah, that that always meshes with me, and the writing used to be not even a thought. I mean, I always enjoyed writing in school, but I wasn't like I was like, "No, no, I just wanna, like, showcase the photos," but now, I'm trying to make sure that people are able to make something like, it doesn't have to look exactly like mine, but I'm giving you something that's real and attainable and, like, showing how you can actually do it, um, and because I wasn't doing like, I started out not doing any sort of sponsored things, and I'm very clear about I will work on sponsor posts, but only for things that I believe in, only for things I've actually tried. I'm not gonna just talk about something I've had plenty of opportunities to, like, say great things about things for money that I've declined because, um, I'd rather people trust my recommendations. Um, that's more important to me, and unfortunately, not everybody's like that, but,
So
you
you're
know.
not gonna work with Manscaped?
I get some really interesting pitches, man. I delete a lot. I even
Yeah,
put up some, like, disclaimer on my contact form. A lot of people don't read.
interesting. So
Yeah.
where do you see the future going for what you're doing?
Oh, it's so hard to say. I really like 2020 what was last year? 3 was, like, a really volatile year with, like, Google algorithms and stuff. Um, so, I mean, I'm hoping that I can be a little more consistent with, putting new and updated content on my website. Um, I mean, the podcast is a lot of fun. That's been a great, um, kind of side venture. We would love me and my co-host on that would like to, you know, maybe speak at conferences or whatever about what we're doing, because, she goes to a big genealogy conference every year, and, that could be fun. I did a speaking engagement last year for it was interesting that they chose me because I didn't go to culinary school, but it was a master's, um, capstone class for registered dietitians, and they wanted me to speak about developing recipes. So these people have all like the science and nutrition, but they hadn't actually developed recipes. So being able to, talk about things like that don't necessarily involve me being in the kitchen doing dishes all the time because that's an exhausting part of my job. Um, but yeah, I hope to just build a really solid resource for people and to never stop, like, being curious about food and different flavor combinations and making people realize that you can do it at home. It doesn't always have to be a big production. Um, just keeping people connected and
Yeah.
inspiring them to use leftovers because, man, I slept on leftovers and freezing stuff for the longest time, and now I rely on them, and whenever I share stuff about that, people are always like they're, like, so thankful for ideas for how to do that, and so, um, reducing food waste
That's awesome.
by being creative with stuff is always I don't know. That was a very rambly answer. I
No, it's
don't know, I'm
okay.
just gonna keep trucking along.
So big flavors from a tiny kitchen, the evolution of that is, you have a tiny kitchen. Like, it's
Yeah.
literal, right?
Oh, I would love to have a bigger kitchen, and we were gonna try to get, to move into a house before, right before the 2020 thing happened, and so now we're staying put because the prices are crazy, so the kitchen's still tiny. If I do get a big kitchen, I'm not changing my brand. How do you feel about it when people post recipes that have errors or don't make sense? I try I get frustrated sometimes when there are, like, big either either very well-known, reputable, like, chefs or resources that you can tell they didn't test things in an actual home kitchen, but they're trying to put it out there for home cooks, or, like, recipes that have errors that make it harder for people to follow a recipe, like listing the ingredients in the order that you use them instead of just like whatever's the main ingredient first. So it's annoying to me, but I feel like people I've gotten better. I certainly wasn't always great at it. So I mean, everybody's in a different place when they're writing about recipes or putting things out there, but um
I
yeah.
I had I had an interaction today with somebody in my comment section. I had a 20-second short about making, sweet potato casserole, And
Mhm.
I said, you lay it out in the pan, you put your butter, brown sugar, your marshmallows on top if you want that, and you bake it for, until it gets brown. And they said, couldn't you give us the temperature? And it's like, all right, dude, like you can start at whatever temperature. I don't even look at the temperature most of the time. Um,
Mm.
Anything above 325 is going to work. I didn't give you a time. I just told you until it's brown. Um,
Well, and if you're doing, like, a short video clip, you don't have time for all the details,
Well, that
you
too,
know?
but also, like, I try when I was doing recipes that they weren't like, okay, quarter cup of this and half a cup of that, because personally, I don't measure, and,
Mhm.
for me, it's more about the technique than
Mhm.
actual measurements. It's not we're not
Right.
baking where it's actual chemistry, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I think, like, there's different ways that people approach cooking, and they're all valid. I think when some people need a guideline when they're trying to recreate it, especially if it's something they haven't done before. So, I've been trying to get better with, like, when I'm writing up a recipe, instead of saying, like, 1 orange, or that might not be the greatest example, like 1 lemon, or the juice of 1 lemon, I'll try to, like, also give a quantity for that, because some lemons are this big, some lemons are this big,
Very
some
true.
of them are real juicy, some aren't, and there could be, a tablespoon of lemon juice or, like, a quarter cup in one, and there's a huge difference. So, from my perspective, in wanting to help people be able to replicate things at home, I try to be as accurate as possible, even when it's not baking, but I'll like, in a lot of my recipes too, I'll say, "It doesn't really matter, but here's, like, a rough, like, here's a ballpark, like, you want,
Yeah.
like, a medium green bell pepper, about a cup of chopped bell pepper." Um,
I think that's good. Personally, I guess maybe I get into my own head where it's like, I'm intentionally being vague because I don't know how much
mhm,
green pepper you like in a dish, or
yeah,
how much potato you can, because to me it's not the exact composition isn't as important as whether you enjoy it or not. But
mhm,
I think there's definitely both sides of that where it's like, if somebody to have the guidelines and then establish that they can make it once, and then they can kind of
mhm.
experiment from there.
Yeah,
Um,
I usually try to make if I'm making someone else's recipe, I'll the first time I'll try it as it's written I wanna try what they wrote. Unless my gut tells me something's off with this, or something wouldn't work for my particular family or whatever. But then the next time, if I like it and the next time I make it, maybe I'll make some adjustments.
okay, so before we get to that
Yeah.
comment, let me ask you a question, a related question. How do you feel when people make the recipe that you have but didn't follow it and then complain about the result?
Again, I think people can complain about anything and everything. If you don't like it because you substituted black beans for sugar, like, that's on you. Um,
What about, like, black beans for, like, kidney beans?
I mean, I think it depends on the recipe. If the reason they didn't end up liking it was because of something, like, texturally about the black beans versus the kidney beans, then that's on them. But, I mean, I think it depends on the substitution. I've definitely had people say, like, um "Oh, we didn't like this, but I cut the amount of this in half and I swapped this out," and it's like, "Well, then you didn't like what you made, but it's not what I put out there," and that's fine.
I can read between the lines there, Ashley.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So it
Yeah.
looks
I
like
will yeah.
in
Sorry.
the course of this, we've inspired somebody to start their own channel, which is awesome.
Aw,
There you
that's
go.
awesome.
Yeah. Great job, Sarah. I love seeing somebody pick up and do something creative, and to know that
Mhm.
this conversation might have, sparked that for you. I'm really, really proud. Thank you.
And that's an adorable photo. I don't know if that's your little one, but that's adorable.
So Ashley,
Yeah.
I told you we'd go 40 minutes and we go on 48 minutes. So I'm keeping you, but
No.
we can obviously at any point connect again and do this again sometime. Where can people find you?
You can find me locally in Ossining, New York. I'm usually hanging out at the coffee shop or the library. No, my website is bigflavorstinyKitchen.com. I'm on social media at Big Flavors. I hang out most on Instagram, I would say. Um, and then my podcast is called Passing the Plate, and that's at passingtheplate.org. And we put out a new episode every Thursday. Yeah, I'm always happy to connect with people. And
Awesome.
oh, it's Sarah's little brother. That's adorable. He's a cutie.
And just for everybody who is in the video, I put a link to one of Ashley's most popular recipes, the baby spinach and cheddar quiche made with fresh spinach, not frozen
Yes.
spinach, in the notes below, as well as link to her website and her social media, so you can find her by clicking through those links as well. And I'm gonna end it here. Thank you so much for watching. Ashley, you can stick on for a second.
Sure.
Thanks so much for watching. Make sure you hit the video with a thumbs up, subscribe, and obviously follow Ashley. Have an amazing weekend, and we will talk to you next time.
Thanks, Derry. Thanks, everyone.